Hi, my name is Hayward Nishioka, and today we'll be looking at judo mat work. The throwing portion of judo has always held prominence in the sport. It wasn't until in the 1960s that the importance of judo mat techniques was to surface. And surface it did, as Anton Geesink of the Netherlands pinned Akio Kaminaga of Japan to take the gold in the open weight division in the '64 Olympics in Tokyo. Since that time, to the latest Olympics in 1984 in Los Angeles, where Yasuhiro Yamashita pinned Mohamed Rashwan of Egypt, mat techniques have had a steady rise in usage. During the 1950s, unless a mat technique was executed quickly, the contestants were halted and resumed a standing position in order to determine a winner. Thus, mat techniques took a backseat to standing judo. Judo's entry into the Olympics started a new trend as formal rules were established by the International Judo Federation. And in addition to weight divisions, rules governing mat work took precedence over personal preferences. Presently, the rules allow the contestants to continue on the mat as long as there is an imminent possibility of a pin, choke, or an armbar. It is only when there is a cessation of progress that the referee is at liberty to direct the contestants to resume the contest in a standing position. This shift in mat policy has added to the development of judo overall and mat techniques specifically, as new techniques for entries into standard techniques have risen dramatically. Not only has the practice of mat work increased, but the percentage of wins as a result of mat work has increased as well. In the 1950s, perhaps only 5% of major contest wins could be attributed to mat work. The 60s, 10 to 15%, 20 to 25% in the 70s, and by the 1980s, approximately 30% of major contest wins were either directly or indirectly a result of mat skills. With the increased usage of mat work, the contestant who is unfamiliar and untrained in these skills is clearly at a disadvantage. Except for our more elite athletes in judo, the rest of the country lags far behind other countries in mat skills. It is for this reason that under the direction of Tim Dalton and ultimately USGI President Frank Fullerton, that this videotape presentation has been produced and with the expectation that judoka throughout the country may familiarize themselves with these new and innovative techniques. This videotape presentation is divided into 4 areas: pins, chokes, arm bars, and entries. And while all of the moves do not have a step-by-step audio explanation, it is felt that the impromptu commentaries in the background is as important as the moves themselves. What is the lure and fascination that brings some to enjoy mat work? Well, here are a few possibilities. Standing techniques are subject to judgment calls. One referee may award a full point, or a half a point, or even a yuko, and this for the same throw. On the other hand, mat techniques are a matter of time or submission. In pins, for example, 30 seconds equals a full point. 25 to 29 seconds, a half a point. 20 to 24 seconds, a yuko. 10 to 19 seconds, a koka. As for arm bars and chokes, the contestant taps twice to signify his loss. Furthermore, some are more strength-oriented rather than power-oriented. It wasn't until the 1970s that we became aware of fast and slow-twitch muscle fibers. Those with slow-twitch muscle fibers could capitalize on their innate ability for endurance and sustained contraction, so vital in mat work. Mat techniques are also dynamic and challenging, since there are a plethora of novel entry techniques, if not techniques themselves. In fact, there are so many techniques that the application has exceeded traditional nomenclature. In Japan, the birthplace of judo, variations have been handled by just calling them kuzure, or modified techniques, as in kuzure kesagatame or kuzure kamishiho. It's for this reason that we have taken the liberty of assigning new names in order to give a reference point from which to start. Lastly, mat techniques can be practiced with success even in post-competitive years. It's not uncommon to find the older judoka versed in mat techniques to handle the unsuspecting young upstarts with ease on the mat. These and other fine points will be discussed by our panel of experts in this presentation of judo mat work. Our panel of experts. First of all, we have John Ross, who is a Republic of China champion, Jimmy Woolley, 2 times Olympian, and Igor Zatsipin, Southern California champion. We're first going to look at some of the pins. First, the kesagatame, or scarf hold, a very basic pin to judo. Here we see a top view. And now a katagatame, or scarf hold. And another variation.
Yeah, that's a good move.
Shiho Gatame. Good fundamental mat move. Kami Shio Gatame.
Yeah, upper 4 corners locking. That's a good move because you really control the upper body and keep the person's shoulders pretty well intact with the ground.
Shows how Jimmy gets his hands. He has one hand of the belt. Nobody's going to pull him off.
That's Kashiwazaki's move. He used to do that quite a bit. And it's very effective. You can arm lock from there, or you can actually pin.
I guess Kashiwazaki is one of the better mat technicians in the lightweight divisions.
Yeah, they say he was like a spider, trapdoor spider.
This is Ushiro Kesagatame. In the last match from the Olympics here that we just showed, that was the pin that beat the Japanese.
Yeah, it's a very difficult pin to escape from if you keep tension on the sleeve.
Again, Kami Shiho.
Showing the control of that that arm.
I mean, rather Tate Shiho.
Yeah. Another positioning of the hand.
And some of these techniques don't have names for them because they vary a little bit, and of course, as we mentioned before, they use the variations, and they'll say a kuzure, which means variation, but they don't really have a specific name for them.
I think that's one of the great things about judo. There, 100 instructors might show the same thing 100 different ways, and each one would be right.
Yeah.
If it works, it's right.
That's right. Yeah, grabbing your own lapel, I think, makes the grip about twice as strong as your own as grabbing.
That's one of the things I remember from your competition. You used your own lapel quite a bit.
I think it really helps encircling a body part and then grabbing your own lapel.
It kind of frees one arm, the other arm, and it acts kind of like a third arm for you, right?
Yeah, it really is effective.
Jimmy's doing one of the real fundamentals in mat work too, and he leaves no airspace. He becomes almost a part of the other person.
Yeah.
The more airspace you leave between your body and his body, the more chance he has of escaping. When he grabs with both hands there's just absolutely no space between the two people.
You're like paint. And I think in Tateshi Ogatami too, you're so tight to him and you float on him, but you're very tight. You try to make yourself like 2 spoons.
Yeah. You know, I heard the comment once. One of my instructors, Mr. Inoue, told me that it was like toffee on a hot summer day. It kind of sticks to you and you just can't get rid of it.
That's it. Yeah, you can't shake it loose.
I know that feeling.
But you're right, John. If you create any airspace at all, that just a little bit of room creates that excess spacing, and the opponent can pretty well buck you off.
Again, how he grips the belt around the neck. When he lifts up, he's really just showing you the move, how he's controlling the head.
That position there against the neck, it pretty well puts the opponent into almost a paralysis. You eliminate the bridge by keeping the head kicked into the chest like that.
Just like standing judo, it's really important to control the head. If you can control the head when you're standing, you're able to throw. If you control the head in mat work, you make it much
That's
harder
right.
for your opponent to get
Yeah,
up.
so that is why that's something so effective. That control of head and neck, you basically fatigue the neck or put the neck in a very weak position, and when that happens, where the head goes, the body goes.
He's also
Very
controlling with his
effective.
feet.
Yeah.
Jimmy Martin's always been a really good mat player, one of our better mat players.
Yeah, he's really got that position down. Now that position there, where you try to isolate the legs, I find is a little bit less effective than the other way where you keep the legs in. I think when you try to isolate something like that, it tends to break easier.
Again, he's controlling the head, almost like a wrestler would capture the head with his hands.
Yeah, that Kazuya Michio Gatami, I think it's one of the strongest pins there.
Yeah, here's how his hands are underneath.
You really get control of that head. It's like a kata, shoulder and head lock.
See how he has his hands? He can create a lot of power with that hand lock.
Also, you're putting lateral flexion into the neck, which makes the neck very weak at the same time.
You mean moving the head off to the side?
Moving it off to the side,
For
yeah.
us laymen here.
Yeah. That really makes the neck in a vulnerable position. It's almost a neck dislocation, but with the arm entangled, it's legal.
Now he's going to a breakdown, bringing the player from on the ground onto his back.
Very effective move.
This has been termed as a walkover thing, but we don't really have a term for this in judo, and we don't even know whether it would qualify for a regular mat technique. In some instances, some referees might say it is, and other referees would say it isn't.
I think the position itself, the walkover itself would be classified, but I think maybe you might have to let go to get more shoulder in position so that it looks more like a regular pin.
Or when he gets on top, if he would just throw his leg back over the body. If he doesn't call osaikomi, if you move over and the referee doesn't call osaikomi and you're there for several seconds and you realize the referee's not going to call osaikomi, I think from the position right here, if he just took his right leg back over the head,
yeah,
then the
that would
referee
do
would
it.
probably call osaikomi.
Yeah.
You have to play each referee almost like your opponent and decide what they're going to accept and what they're not going to accept.
That's true. If there's any question, you can always vary the positioning so that the referee will accept it. But you can see that the opponent is obviously at a great disadvantage here.
Both arms
Both
controlled.
arms are controlled.
Nice walkover.
Yeah.
Now I think if he just stayed here or back to the back, it would definitely be a hold down. But
Yeah.
he could also move here to Wakigatami very easily. Again, no airspace, tight, a lot of control. I think control and domination are the two of the big words in all parts of judo. I've seen Jimmy do this in competition.
Another nice move.
Controlling lapels, under lapels.
Yeah.
And here again,
Again,
is
that's not
another
a
one.
classic move.
Yeah, it's not a classic
It's more of a
move,
wrestling.
and yet there is control, and the person cannot get out of the hold down, except sometimes it's not quite considered as a hold down in terms of judo.
I think that one of the things that especially young players have to understand is how important it is to go under the person's arms and under the armpits to control. A lot of guys, when they're on top, will go over the arms and try for a choke immediately over the top. They don't have the control that you do when you come under the arm bar, under the armpit and through the armpit and control the arms. He could sit out. Jimmy could sit out right now and be in Wakigatami.
Yeah. Yeah, you could go to an arm lock pretty easily from that position.
Tremendous
If
control.
If they wouldn't give you no osaikomi.
I think he termed this as the bottoms-up technique.
Mm-hmm.
For obvious reasons.
It's very effective. You take your pick. on the arms.
Keep your both hands on the opposite ankle. Got the belt. Get my knee up underneath. This guy was so big I had to let go and get a better grip.
Well, Randy's about 235 to 245.
Yeah, but that's
so-
a very effective way of controlling the legs, though. You can really see how that
You know, a lot of
isolates them.
Yeah, a lot of people don't use the tying up of legs very much, and I think that's an important part that we really miss out on in mat work.
A lot of people, I show this technique all over the country, and a lot of coaches tell me that it's illegal, but it really isn't. I've gone to all of the top referees. There's no leg bar. There's no pressure on the leg. I don't bring it up so that there's any pressure on the spine. I just lock the leg that's bent in its natural direction.
Yeah.
I lock it to the gi or to the belt, and then control it and move around. And most judo players get ready to protect their arms and neck and not their leg. They leave their legs dangling, and they're always surprised when it's trapped.
Yeah, and with the legs entangled like that, there's no way of bridging or really shaking loose. It's very effective.
Now, if I can get him up stacked, most people I'll stack a little higher, but Randy's so big I had trouble lifting him. If I can stack him good and then control that other arm, it's really hard. My knee will come underneath.
That kind of acts
Yeah.
as a brace. Huh?
And it keeps him from moving, keeps him from being able to bridge. And now if I can get the other arm controlled, he's really stuck.
Yeah, it looks like to me it's a legal move. I see nothing wrong with it.
You see where you're
It's
coming
very
across
effective.
the arm too, and trapping that arm.
Yeah, that's nice too. When you get that, if you can get his arm over his head, you've got it. Like that, that's very effective. That's like a kata gatami in a way. It's
From the reverse side.
from the reverse
probably, yeah.
side, which is very effective.
Stack him. The more I can get that
Yeah.
leg underneath, the more stacked he's going to be. The less movement he'll have.
Yeah.
It's too bad they can't hear the sounds, the grunts that Randy makes when you do that.
He must be in a real bind there.
Yeah.
I always grin when I get this. This is sort of like a front chancery in wrestling, but when I come over, I have to catch the other arm. In the beginning, I'll use both hands on one arm, and then about halfway through, I'll release my left arm and catch his opposite arm.
Now, what would we call something like this as far as the terminology is concerned?
I call it a Polish whizzer, because that's what it's called in wrestling, or a front chancery.
Uh-huh.
But when I come over, it's really a submission hold. When I step across now, he'll tap out, because you can see that he's choked.
Yeah, I can see where your hand is coming across his neck.
And when my chest comes up and pushes his arm, his right arm down into that choke, it's not the pull from my hand, it's actually the push from my chest onto his arm that makes him submit.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. That's very nice.
Maybe we put this technique in the wrong section. We should have put it under the chokes, maybe.
This one, he's a little bit choked and a little bit pinned. And,
Yeah, it's kind of like a combination.
and it's a takedown, a breakdown, all at once.
Yeah.
Now I'll put the pressure on them when I move over and put pressure on them. Usually they'll tap here.
I can see the hand kind of waving.
Yeah. Getting a picture of my better side here. Again, controlling both arms. Now if he braces his leg out so that I can't roll, I'll go for the opposite knee and do the same thing.
Yeah, you create enough balance, and it looks like just like standing work, you have off balances too. When you can create, make him move in one direction and then get him to commit, and then you can take advantage of that commitment and post him on the other way.
Yeah.
You can really get him to roll.
This is again going through the legs, but using the tying up his leg that's already bent. I'll take my knee and sort of trap his foot, and then go through. My right knee just trapped his left leg. Go through and catch his ankle and bring it underneath, and then get his foot into my, I guess that's my elbow pit.
Yeah.
What's the technical word for the crook of my elbow?
Yeah, it's called the antecubitus.
The antecubitus.
Yeah.
I knew that word. Catch his belt. Randy's so big I can't catch his belt, so I catch whatever I could get there. And then roll in again, controlling the leg.
Yeah, that's a very good move. Again, you're right. I think there's not enough emphasis on controlling the feet, and controlling the legs in judo.
With your antecubitus.
Yeah, right. The antecubital fossa is the actual correct term.
Oh, God.
I knew that.
Yeah, right. But yeah, but I think we've got to realize that by coming in, if we're coming into the feet first, we've got to get control of that before we move on to other territory.
And whenever a person rolls into you on several holds, I can do this on several holds. When a person rolls in with that free hand, take it. Take the hand and arm and tie it up. And it stops his roll and gets him actually in worse position than he was before.
Oh yeah, he's right there. I don't see any hope but dissolving.
Drive a knee under and try and stack him.
Yeah.
Randy's very hard to stack.
Well, he's just about ready to be
Pretty much.
Express,
If he were to kick loose with his legs, you still have the upper control. Say, you know, if he were to be able to kick loose with his legs, you still have the upper control of his upper body. You still have the pin anyway.
This is something I've just been doing recently. So many people now, when you use your arms against their legs from that position, they'll do the Neil Adams type arm bars.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just said one day, why am I putting my arm down with his leg? His leg is so much stronger than my arm. Why don't I use my leg instead of my arm to make the lift?
Yeah,
And
much
I've
better
been getting
idea.
over really easy now just by trapping his leg with my leg and using the stronger muscle against the stronger muscle instead of the weaker arm, and then I don't get arm barred. They can't attempt the Neil Adams kind of arm bar from the bottom. And we'll see those arm bars later. Jimmy Martin will show the arm bar that's from this position. But when I trap the leg here and hold it and then spin around, I'm really not using much strength. I just go right around his leg, and he has very little that he can do to stop. Now, some players will stay on their back, and it makes it really easy to cradle. Others will do like Randy's doing, and as I go over, he'll go to
roll.
his stomach. But I'm still through the legs, and I'd much rather be on top of him on his stomach than be stuck between his legs where he can arm bar me or try and choke him. And there's some players who are really strong from that position when they're on their back with you up between their legs.
Yeah, because they can really come in and get control, especially with the choking or arm locking.
And I leave my right arm in there, and then I'll come back and cradle, or try and cradle. Especially the strong against a player who stays on his back. I still have control of the leg that I went around, and then hook the cradle.
You know, this is one technique that always seems to come up, is a cradle, and it always seems to be a subject of controversy, but what do you think about the cradle?
Well, a lot of wrestlers will go from here. A wrestler now needs to put the back onto the ground to get his pin. So a wrestler from here will roll over and lose the chest contact. And when you do that, a lot of referees won't call it a pin. But as long as you're chest to chest, then a cradle's a good move. When you lose the chest contact, a lot of referees won't call the cradle a pin.
Yeah.
Now, Jimmy, did you ever use the cradle while in competition? You had so many other techniques.
Not as much as John did, or as we're showing here. I did try to control the legs though quite a bit, and it was kind of a modified cradle, but it wasn't a classic.
This kind of simple walk around that Randy's doing is effective. A lot of times, especially myself, I'll do things that are really complicated and sort of forget moves that are so nice and smooth. Dan Patilla was really good at this type movement, just controlling
Dan
and
Patilla,
moving around you.
yeah. But you're right. What he did here, it looked like he went for a choke, and then diverted the attention of the opponent, and then went ahead and did the walk around.
So much control. You leave that elbow out, and it's just a lever.
It's a lever arm you can work with.
I guess looking at it from the defensive side, I would imagine that it would be better just to have those arms in tight to the body. Would that be correct? Or?
Yes, I think that'd be the way to avoid that. But if the wing comes out, you have to take advantage of it.
Yeah.
Now you'll control it with his arm, not just his hand. A lot of people will try and just use the hand, but you have to get an arm all the way through. Then it's really tight.
Now here, I think I would maybe even grab the lapel in this position.
With what arm?
With the right arm, with Randy's right arm.
So your arm would
grab his right. And I would
see,
probably try to put my elbow into his kidney, so he would be. I'd have a little deeper position. He'd be less likely to roll
You had-
away from me.
You had a whole series here where you would do an arm bar or
Yeah, it was like a key
step
lock
over,
position.
yeah.
Yeah, a key lock type, where you make your body like a pyramid, and you try and control from there and bringing the elbow into the kidney or into the low back area.
I remember too, sometimes you would use your knees and control the person's head.
Yeah,
and neck.
control the head, right, and try to isolate that arm and the head at the top so that you could, work that other arm free, be John's right arm free, and try to work it at either arm locking or a key lock position.
But this is still a nice move. Walk
Yeah,
right
this is very
around.
nice. Yeah, this is one of the basics. Like you say, we have to stay with the basics because we cannot build on anything but the basics.
So my body position barely moved at all, and I went from being fairly safe to being pinned. There I'm doing my Bozo the Clown imitation, my hair sticking out from my bald head. And it would have been a little better, as you say, to get
Yeah. Maybe feed that,
feed the lapel.
feed the
right
lapel
in.
to the right hand there. It might be a little bit more secure.
Oh, here
Now
we
there
go.
he goes. Okay,
Yeah.
so there he's going to do it.
I would have gone to the
I
other
would have gone to
side.
the other side too, because I think you do have a tendency to choke your own self
Yeah.
when that happens, and it tends to stop you from turning.
Oh, he's listening to you.
All right. Here we
He
go.
heard you.
That's it.
Good.
That's more effective.
Now, that's
I
a
think.
good coach.
Yeah. Now that's. I like that, Rainey. Good job.
Uh,
Yeah, he's.
I think what he's going to do from here is something that I actually learned from watching you in a tournament. I won't say how many years ago, but stepping over and now controlling the elbow. Yeah. If he takes his elbow and goes across to the outside and then leans on it, it's really a strong pin.
He's not listening to you though, John.
Yeah.
You gotta shove that
Tell him
arm
what to
over
do
there.
here, Jim.
There.
Oh, there's going into a key lock, a modified
Yeah.
key lock, but he's.
Yeah. His weight's too far.
He weighs too far back. I would prefer to have the weight a little bit more forward and be in more of a knee,
Yeah,
like that
come up
position.
there.
But
I think your problem is that both your arms are too big.
I think it was my stomach that was too big in that position.
Well,
Yeah,
you
this
get a
is-
chance to show him now.
This is how I learned.
now that's
Yeah.
that to me is more effective.
Yeah.
That looks like you're putting the pinpoint pressure on the shoulder, and you're really isolating it.
I learned this from you about a long time ago.
Yeah, I think I remember something about that. Yeah, I think one of the keys to Nagaz, I think, is isolation. You don't want to try to hold the entire person down, just a portion of him. And a shoulder and a head and neck is probably enough to warrant a pin.
Again, just like standing up, and you have to move. Judo's a game of movement. If the player on the bottom, Randy in this case, stays and waits, things are going to happen, and those things are going to be bad. He's going to be choked. He's going to be armbarred. When you get a chance to get an arm, you have to move. And a nice easy roll
Very nice.
comes into his Bushido Keisagatami again, like the example we saw earlier from the Olympics.
Yeah, one of the
Very
heavyweights
effective,
did
yeah.
this quite often. His name was Chok from Romania, and he'd usually do a what was it, a Sotomaki Komi.
Yeah, okay, right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, it is. You can see almost it's like that. Just from a kneeling position here is the same kind of thing.
Here Randy is trapping by just clamping down with the arm against his ribs and then coming around.
Also, remember that guy that was 7'6", that Korean?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
He used to do this move. He used to do the Soto Makikomi and then into the Ushio Keisagatami.
Huge fella.
Yeah, he weighed about 360 pounds.
Yeah.
I do a similar roll, but with a sit-up. Hook the arm and then sit out and come back with my shoulder so that he goes over.
Yeah. So here we have a Yokoshi Yogatami.
Tight, a lot of control. This is something I saw Gamba from Italy do. Slip the knee in
Yeah.
a nice pin. I have to control my opponent's arm to one side.
So you just pull it to the opposite side.
Right to the opposite side. Use both hands to get it over there, 2-on-1, and then slip the arm around. Once I get the arm around, slipped a knee in, and the opponent usually doesn't feel that he's in any.
You can't
doesn't
tell that
feel
he's on the edge of a cliff.
uncomfortable. Yeah.
He's about to fall off of it right now. Yeah, that's very, very strong. I think you had a point there about two hands on one spot. I think when you put two hands on one spot, you tend to triangulate in such a way that makes you superior in that particular position.
Yeah. Real low to the ground, turn him over, and then move in for a pin.
Some of these moves are very subtle, but they're so effective. But you have to really look carefully to really see the important points.
This is
Now,
one
that's
that,
a nice move.
yeah, this is one that Pat Burris does all the time. And you were commenting about this earlier.
When your leg's entangled and you're working with Pat or you in this position, you're going to be pinned.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can see it, but when you've done this to me and when Pat's done it, he'll use his wrist and straighten his wrist out really hard against the tail of the
Yeah,
judogi.
Well, the pubis bone is.
Pubic symphysis, yeah, that would make it.
I was going to say that word. You just beat me to it.
This
You
is where
notice?
he puts, yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
He
So you're
puts pressure to the inside of the leg.
inside of the thigh, which is very sensitive. The femoral
Yeah.
artery happens to run through there, which makes it even more sensitive.
You know, I'm glad you're here, you know.
Well, these pressure points are,
Right.
are
They're
there
really
for a
important.
reason.
You can see Randy lets go really quick with his legs, and you're really stuck. I see too many people lose a tournament. They'll throw a coca, end up with that leg entangled position, and then the referees break him and stand him up, and the guy will throw him and he'll lose the match. When you're in that position, you should win. You should be over. There's the wrist. That wrist has to drive down
Yeah.
when you have the...
When did Pat
Put the
win
pressure.
the Grand Championship? I think it was one of the last years they had it, 19...
It was 1970.
3 or 2?
I think it was
St. Louis.
76 he won it, actually.
Oh, 76?
Yeah.
Might have been, yeah.
Yeah.
I saw him do this in about 4 of his matches, one after the other, doing the same technique. And it's when the opponent doesn't know what's happening. He thinks he's getting away with something, and all of a sudden, because of a technique like this, he gets caught.
Yeah.
Notice how he made the lapel, made the jacket available, and then went for it. Then straighten the arm, put the pressure on.
Yeah. You have to take some of the slack out sometimes.
No wasted motions, no flopping around, kicking with the legs, just
And that
right
left-
into a technique.
That left arm has to come right down the spine, too. It's a little difficult for me with Randy because he's quite a bit heavier.
One of the things we lose in mat work is we get taught judo where you're standing up, you specialize. I used Uchimata. That was for 20-some years. That's all I did standing up. On the ground, you have to have a different technique for almost every position a body can be in, and it has to be practiced, and you have to be able to do it well. You can't isolate one technique and use it in mat work like you can standing up. You have to be good from every position, from the top, from the bottom, legs entangled between the legs, on your back, every place. And I think, and it might be prejudice, but I think that good mat players are usually a little sharper player, a little smarter player, because they have to think, and there's so many positions they have to play from.
It's a real chess game,
Yeah.
and you've got to be able to really, like you say, come from 8 different directions.
Here I'll be doing something from the top, but at the same time you have to be good from the bottom, the same position from the bottom. I lean back, hoping that Randy will think I'm weak and come up, but I still control his arm here so that when he comes up I can pull him right back to his back. He lets go of his legs to roll on top of me, and instead I've rolled on top of him.
So it's
Just
when you
fall
lean
off.
back that he
Yeah.
releases to come up, and then
Yeah.
you roll.
He thinks I'm vulnerable for the pin, comes after me, and because I've gripped in that particular manner, I can still keep him on his back. He really can't come up, control his arm, step over.
Oh, yeah.
These are the little subtle things that really catch a lot of people. Jimmy, you know, when you were in competition, was there a favorite technique that you used a lot of as you were doing your mat work?
I used to use a udegarami position to a roll, to a pin. and I liked it because I was able to use the Udigurami and actually create a situation which put the opponent under stress. He felt like the armbar was going to be applied, so it tended to take his mind away from my actual roll or pin, and therefore I was able to get him and usually roll him over into a pinning position. So I like to use a little diversion. Sometimes you like to divert their attention away, like in John's doing here. He's leaning back like he's weak, like a lame duck approach, and then the opponent will move in a pre-described manner, and then you take advantage of that and capitalize and turn it into your advantage.
Once I trap the arm with the grip I have with my left hand, once I trap his arm as he starts to move over, he's really in a weak position. And yet when he starts to roll, he thinks he's strong.
Now that's a very strong position there. By rolling, as he comes through, he really creates... Bringing the head low is important, I think.
Somewhat like the one that John had done earlier, where you trapped the arm.
Similar to a wrestler's front chancery.
Yeah.
This technique was really popular a long time ago and then sort of died away. But judo or all athletics are like that. Technique gets used a lot. People build defenses against it. You quit using it. And 20 years later, everybody's forgotten the defenses against it, and you come back with it.
And you rediscover it.
And win a lot of matches with it until those defenses come back. But that's really a strong roll.
Here you can see that you can either grab the right lapel or the left lapel and apply this technique. I think a lot of the mat practitioners today don't really fall for this one. They have a pretty good defense for this, but I think every once in a while you'll catch somebody that isn't too good on the mat with this technique.
Well, also, and you'll notice the off balance there is toward the feet. If you do the normal roll, you do it towards the head or the shoulder. You do it toward the feet, though, it's more difficult to, I think, defend against.
This is one that Roy Tsukimoto showed me, and of course using the same idea that Jimmy Woolley had expressed earlier, where you use your own judo-gi as a sort of a helper, a third arm, and as you lean back, the person usually tries to get that leg over the head, and at that time you just pull it down.
Yeah, it's very nice.
I kind of call that the Tsukimoto crunch.
You can see why.
Ken, this is again what I like about judo. You take a basic technique like Keisagatame and then show all of the variations that have come from it and the ways different players can use it into their strengths and their abilities.
But still, as we were talking like this, we still have the problem of not being able to name these, and I guess what the people that are going to be watching this videotape presentation are going to have to do is to kind of refer back to these and say, well, it's the 15th move that we saw on the tape, or if we do give some kind of a name to it, or the technique, then perhaps they can use that name to practice the move.
Yeah.
One of the bad things about names, though, it's good to have a name so that you can refer back to it, you can remember it, you can write it in a log and use it for training. But one of the things that happens in a sport like judo is when something gets a name, it becomes a law. And that's the only way you can do it. And I think that's hurt us in judo. A lot of referees won't call a pin because it isn't Keisagatame or Katagatame. And seconds are wasted while the referee's deciding whether it's a pin or not, and it shouldn't be. If the person's controlled on the ground, it should be a pin. Same with a throw. If the person is thrown to the back, the referee shouldn't worry about it not having a Japanese name.
Yeah, we shouldn't worry about nomenclature as much and more about the actual move.
This is kind of a step over. This really puts pressure on the diaphragm once the person's caught with this. What you have to do is step over your own foot as he tries to hook your leg in an effort to get away from a Keisagatame. And in order to trap that leg, you have to kind of sit your leg upright to trap the back leg, which I seem reluctant to do here, but there it is. Now you just merely step over your own foot, and it puts pressure on the diaphragm.
You've trapped his leg and are bringing it up with your other knee.
That brings up an interesting point. about the pressure on the diaphragm when you're doing the waza. I think if you can synchronize your breathing with his in pinning, and then when he exhales, if you can just basically clamp down as he's exhaling, I think it does tend to create a stress situation for your opponent and make him more likely to submit, even in a pinning position.
The fear of not being able to breathe is very strong among human beings. I just hate it when I can't breathe.
So you can really work, it's like the boa constrictor.
Jimmy, you just sound a little bit esoteric here.
What are we describing right here?
Yeah, the carotid artery.
That looks like your hand.
Yeah, well, this
The
is
carotid sinus.
we're going into the area of chokes now, and we're looking at the areas that you can choke. And first of all, it's the carotid artery is one way of choking. Another one is against the trachea, and then there's a nerve reflex action that occurs too for choking as well.
Called the nerve of Herring. It's a nerve that basically slows down the blood pressure to the brain, puts the opponent in a physiological state of sleep.
Now these are some basic chokes. Hadaka Jime chokes without the jacket. These are the standard chokes that are in the book.
Yeah.
But still, no matter what you see on this tape or in any other training situation, that you still have to have the fundamentals. Without the fundamentals, you can't build.
That's another version of the Hadaka Jime. A lot of the police departments use that as a control technique. That's a Kataha Jime. And the third one previously was called a Okuri Eri Jime. There's another Kataha Jime.
One of my little views of human nature and the fun parts of human nature, California has outlawed the sleeper hold for policemen. They can still shoot people and hit them with sticks, but they can't put them to sleep.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty humorous myself.
This is a Juji Jime, and here's a variation of it coming under the arm. And they use this quite often in international competition to control the opponent's right arm.
I think something that's important in all the mat work is how good players feed their hands. They don't just reach in with one hand, but they'll feed the hand with the other hand. Did you see how when Jimmy started this, he fed his left hand with his right hand? It makes it much tighter, much...
Yeah, removing the slack, I
More
think,
control.
helps a lot. That was done to Hiro Nishioka, as I recall, by Brian Jack.
Well, no, that one was a little bit different.
Oh, a little different?
That's coming up yet.
Okay. 1967 World Championship.
Well, wait a minute, though, but I got even.
Yeah, you got even. I remember that.
It was a little late, but I got even.
Here's a point that some people don't know or understand is you can grab inside of your own sleeve.
That's right.
You can't grab inside your opponent's sleeve, but you can grab inside of your own sleeve, and it gives you tremendous leverage.
Oh, yeah, it's like having a rope around your arm. Very powerful.
Sankaku from the bottom. Sankaku Jime from the bottom.
And this can also be turned into an arm bar as well, can't it?
Yes. If he brings the arm back across towards the camera.
Yeah, I think we don't use Sankaku as much as we probably should.
I think the key point that people miss in Sankaku is the leg that's going around the neck, in this case his left leg, has to be tight to the neck. Most people leave too much slack. Again, airspace.
Yeah,
Can't
right.
have airspaces in mat working. That leg has to be wrapped tightly around the neck, then catch the other ankle and bring it underneath. If you're not quite flexible enough to do it on your own, use your hands. But no airspaces. You have to be tight. And I have people, when I show Sankaku, say their legs are too short or their legs are too thick. And it's always they're trying to choke the person's chest or shoulder instead of just the neck and arm. And,
Yeah.
I've never found a person that I couldn't get my legs around just their neck and their arm.
I think you're right. I think, of course, having some knee flexibility helps, but it sure makes a difference to keep that airspace as minimal as possible. We used to practice on a pillow
Right.
with that, which seems to help.
I used to use a medicine ball to try and bring
Yeah,
the knees
try to
down
bring your
with
knees
a
together. Yeah,
medicine
the
ball.
adductor muscles and the internal muscles have got to be strong so they can keep that tension and that contraction and that tight positioning on his head and shoulder.
I was coming from a standing position to an opponent that's on the ground, maybe an opponent that's missed a drop seoi or who's
Yeah.
been thrown for a lesser score, and then drop right into the sankaku from the rear this time.
That's a very nice position too.
The rear sankaku is, some of the Europeans, Kareth Brown and a few others, have made front sankaku very popular, but the rear sankaku is maybe even stronger, and not as many people
I think
using
it probably is because you don't have the less offense from your opponent.
Notice there's very little space. He's tight around the neck.
This is an interesting one that Jimmy quite often does. It's you crisscross across to the opposite side, and left arm pulls the judo gi underneath the neck, and he comes over with his elbow over the back of the neck.
And leverages down with the elbow onto the neck. Yeah.
Yeah, but and then he slices through with his right hand to the opposite side, and you'll see the right arm starting to go through. You don't get a very good picture here, but you can see where that arm is going right straight through as Jimmy dramatizes his movement there. Then you merely pull the person over using pressure with the left arm.
Now you can see his right arm a little.
Yeah.
A little bit better.
And
Yeah.
rather than to lay him down, you sit him up and get right behind him.
Yeah.
Of course, this is in slow motion, but usually, if you have a good choke on, they'll be out by the time you get to that position where he's sitting up. And here's where I think referees really have to be careful of these types of techniques, because especially with the chokes and the arm bars, they're so fast nowadays with our major competitors. They have to do it fast in order to make that score. And so you have to be in a position to watch. And some of these techniques, they twist so much that it's hard to see it.
I think the referees have to know the techniques, and quite often the referees don't know some of the newer techniques, and so they don't understand that a choke or an armbar is being attempted until it's too late, and
Yeah.
injury comes up just because the referee didn't break it in
Right.
time and award the score.
Yeah, this is one of these instances here where Jimmy is using or taking advantage of the opponent using a failed seoi nage or ippon seoi and floating around to the backside. Now, the first person that kind of showed me this one was Arthur Hollins. You remember
Oh
him?
yeah, sure, Arthur. Yeah.
Yeah. But rather than demonstrate it from this seoi nage position, he did it from the ground position. But it still works. It's very, very effective. Jimmy claims to use this on some of the boys at Tenry, and with quite a bit of success.
Yeah, that's powerful.
Notice how he's trapped the leg,
Yeah.
put pressure on with the leg.
You know, you can't let that guy roll over, so you got to pull back on that leg with the right arm.
I like the way he's controlled the leg. That's sort of unique.
Kind of bends him in a bow.
Then he comes back, yeah, and puts pressure on the back.
Control. No air spaces, tight, a lot of control.
There it is on the ground.
Oh yeah.
It's a good move.
Here again, we don't have a name for that.
Yeah, I know it. It's difficult to name these.
Okay.
Oh yeah, this is a choke from the bottom, looks like.
Jimmy's being pinned with kami shio and then using various sankaku kind of chokes with his arm and his knee. I use this as a last resort. When I can't break the kami shio, time's coming on, I'll slip my hand through and grab the opposite leg and kick outwards. If you don't choke him, a lot of times you can roll out from here. If you kick the foot over, the person will roll out and you'll be on top.
Now this is the one that you were talking about, Jimmy, where I got caught by Brian.
Oh, yeah,
This
that's
is
right,
a move
that's
that
right.
I
Yeah.
started to go into Yokoshio because I thought that Brian was weak to the Yokoshio, and he was actually faking me for this technique. Now I had never seen this technique before, and that's one of the problems with judo in the rural areas. Sometimes we don't see what's happening internationally, and
Tommy
then when we do
Masterson.
get into an international situation, if we're not aware of the technique, we get caught on it.
Yeah.
And I most certainly did get caught on that one.
Yeah, that was like a lame duck
Yeah.
approach.
Tommy Masterson was good at that. He called it a trap choke.
Yeah.
This is another from referee's position in wrestling.
I kind of call this the Ota entry because an instructor by the name of Ota showed me this, and it was very, very effective on
Any-
my neck anyway.
Anytime
Yeah.
you're in a referee's position and can drop your weight towards the opponent's front like that, it's very hard for him to stand. His buttocks will lift off the ground, his knees will lift off, and he'll collapse. So when you've got a choke and can fall forward like that, you really can make him weak.
There's the same technique again that Jimmy had shown just a little bit previously.
Duck under.
Yeah, get in the head.
Well, I kind of call it the run around the rear.
Well, it describes it pretty well.
Yeah.
If Randy won't beat me up, I would have said he had a lot of rear to run around. But
I had to
won't-
go a mile.
I won't say that.
It's around the block, isn't it?
Break his arms down.
Yeah, that's.
This is one that is pretty effective if you get it, and it's kind of a scissoring. You just get the far lapel, and then you just bring your elbow across and push across with the elbow.
Mm-hmm.
Very effective.
And you have to, the main thing is you have to control with those legs. You have to kind of keep the guy's rear end up, where the legs come up. Here's another interesting move. This one was taught to me by Ebi Sensei, who I think was one of the best mat technicians in Japan in the old days.
I think that's called Sode Goruma Jime. There's an awful lot of pressure here because when you push your elbows forward, you really apply a lot of pressure to the choke.
Yeah.
You're going to change hands here again, feed the other hand, right?
Right, and then I'm coming around the neck to the other side. It's kind of like a reversed Juji Gatame,
Yeah.
or a Juji Jime, I'm sorry.
And then shove forward with your elbows.
Right.
Pull with both hands and shove forward with your
Right.
elbows. Yeah, a lot of pressure there.
Of course, as Jimmy says, you shouldn't lose contact either. You have to try to keep up close. You have to just keep your abdominals contracted and just stay in close to the person.
And always in mat work, control other parts. Control his body with your legs. Be tight.
Yeah, there's very little defense for that, being behind him like that.
I call this the Patilla surprise because Dan Patilla surprised me with this one day on a practice session. He just said, "Watch this one," as he was holding me in the kesa, and he just came across with that arm and just really trapped me, surprised me.
Oh, I see.
You
yeah.
have to roll
That is-
those wrists together.
Oh, yeah.
Here again, this is there's no name for that.
Mm-mm.
It was similar. I've done this quite a bit. Similar. You're in Keisagatame and hook deep behind the neck, and then just step over and trap the head in a sankaku type movement. I'd probably still call this some kind of a sankaku,
Mm-hmm.
and apply a lot of a pressure.
This is something similar to what Jimmy had done earlier, except that all I'm doing is to apply the elbow down to the base of the neck, and you can either step over or you can just place the elbow over the neck, and then the controlling factor is to hold that left arm down, or the opponent's right arm with your
Mhm.
left arm,
I see, yeah, right.
so that he doesn't roll. If you let go of that arm, he'll roll and
He'll roll away from you.
yeah.
Yeah.
Brett Barron does this quite well. He'll knock a person down to his knees and then step across.
Here we're trying the sankaku again from the bottom position.
Yeah, yeah,
And the
there's-
important portion, as you saw, was to squeeze the leg in. Now we're looking at the series of takedowns from the sankaku position. And this is quite popular now.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a whole series that can be applied. It can be an arm bar or a choke in some instances, or just a pin.
I think in front sankaku, my sankaku like this, the arm bar and the pin actually have become more important than the choke.
Mm-hmm.
Control with the legs, get him over, key lock,
Oh, yeah, that's...
and then get the arm. Yeah, nice key lock.
He's going for the belt, or he's going for the, yeah, lower portion of the gi there.
You always key lock the same arm. If you have his left arm, then you key lock with your left arm. If you have his right arm, you key lock with your right arm.
It's 1-to-1.
Yeah.
Little controversy on whether it's better to have your thumb up or thumb down. I personally like to grab with my hand down on the key lock, the thumb down. I feel that I can get more.
Yeah, I
more
think
of a
you
twist
get more of a
into it.
ring position, yeah.
But a lot of the younger players, like Jimmy, like to get it the other way. They feel they can grab a little easier. But again, that's what makes judo fun. Different ideas, and the best
Different
one is the one that
variations.
works best for you.
Yeah.
And then move in if you feel that several seconds have gone by and you don't want mate, go to the pin quick. Don't let the referee break a potential win. I've seen too many times when a person will stay trying the armbar, trying the choke, and finally get a mate when they could have shifted to a pin.
I noticed at the '84 Olympics that they used an awful lot of this. You know, Kareth Brown used this particular technique. Hong from Korea used this particular technique to win a couple of matches.
I think Kareth Brown's probably the best in the world. When England came to the U.S. Open several years ago, I think he beat about 9 people in a row with a sankaku.
Eckersley was pretty good at this too.
Who's that?
Eckersley from
Oh, yeah.
Lightweight.
Eckersley's main technique was to go out and get thrown by a koka and then
Oh, yeah.
win with sankaku
Yeah, right.
once they hit the ground. Key lock. This is where most people mess up. They just don't get the key lock.
This could turn into either a choke or an armbar, or into a pin, as we showed earlier.
When you're on top and doing the armbar too, the sankaku doesn't have to be really tight. You can even just cross your ankles, but you have to catch the arm tight with your knee and be able to apply the pressure.
This is to the reverse side, rather than to go to the fall to the side that you're hooking underneath the armpit. You roll to the opposite side, which would be the right side.
And the opponent starts to resist one way, and that's a rule of judo, isn't it?
That's
If
right.
a person resists one way, go the other way, and we tend sometimes to forget that in mat work.
Go to the area
Yeah,
of
that's
least
right.
resistance.
Yeah.
It's somewhat like I think Jimmy, you mentioned it before earlier too, but
Mhm.
so I always think of it in terms of like if you get like a bamboo and you pull it to one side and then you let go, it really goes to the far side, and that's to compensate for the tension. And if you apply that theory to an opponent, you make him overreact, and then you take advantage of his overreaction.
And he's really locking it in right now, looks like.
Yeah.
This is one of the things Kareth Brown will do well from up on top. He'll actually make the opponent submit from this top position. He'll reach down and from there and grab the legs, pull up tight,
Yeah.
and have enough pressure to make the opponent tap out just from here.
Yeah, I think he did that with a fellow from Germany, Stans, during the Olympics.
Mm-hmm.
And just from here, he would just grab without even rolling and apply enough pressure
Just
to
ratchet
get
the
submission.
pressure and tension out of there.
Now see, this is completely opposite from how most people do it, but it's really a position that the opponent doesn't expect to be rolled.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes all the way over, thinks he's safe, and he's really just right back. Move for the key lock. And you have the Sankaku. Have him under the armpit and have the opposite lapel there.
Yeah. This is just a sit through,
Mm-hmm.
and then you can hold them from rolling over, or you can roll them over.
Yeah, there the hands are a little easier.
Yeah,
to
that's
see.
very powerful. Sure, isolate that shoulder.
You know, Jimmy, I kind of recall when you were competing that you used an awful lot of mat techniques in the osaikomi area rather than in the gyaku or the shimiwaza area. Was there a particular reason for that, or?
Well, usually I felt that in the '72 Olympics, I had Starbuck in a pin, and I went for the arm bar, and I hit this steel of his arm, and I felt like if I would have stayed with the pin, I probably would have been able to at least tower him or pin him. But by going to the arm lock, I dropped a pebble to grab another one, and I felt that sometimes you have to, if you find a position that's strong for you, you should stay with it and not try to go to something else if you already have something you really want.
Mhm.
And so I tended to go more with the pinning because to me it was more secure. I felt like I had the other things, the chokes and the arm locks tended to be more of an abstract and for me, and at that point in time. And I knew that if I had the pin, I could usually stick them. But if I were to leave the pin and go to something else, I felt like I was defeating the purpose, really.
Mhm. Well, I've always heard that, you know, like the main thing, or the main road, or the mother of mat work is the osaikomi area, because it enables you to find out about body movement a lot
Mhm.
more than would, let's say, just going for an arm bar or going for a choke.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I felt that I would use the pins to basically get my opponent into use the arm bar to get them into a pinning position. But sometimes I did use the arm bar in a lame duck approach, a switch that we're going to be seeing in just a little bit, which I felt was very effective. But I like to basically use the more body movement, body ballistics to create the pinning position.
John, you know, in today's competition, we see not so much of the pins as much as we do of the arm bars and the chokes. What do you think might contribute to that?
I think it's just a cycle. That right now it's part of the glamour of the sport, the fancy arm bars, the fancy chokes. But I think that it'll swing back to where pin's popular and back. It's what you're good at defending against.
Yeah.
But I think all good mat people are also good pinners. They'll use them when they have to. And right now there's a whole series of arm bars and chokes that people don't have defenses for. As they build defenses for them, then we'll move back to the pins.
I think you're right. The pendulum is swinging the direction of the arm lock.
And Jan's here is doing your same movement, but instead of going to the front or rolling to the side, she's taking it to the rear. We saw the Russians use this quite a bit. Is hooking that same under the arm, hooking it, and then slashing out and going to the rear with it. Notice how she'll throw that leg out behind and then sit down and take the opponent up to the rear. And it's always a weak place when you're in that referee's position, when you're on your hands and knees. It's hard to control yourself from going up into the rear.
Yeah, years ago we tended to try to avoid going in that position for some reason. I'm not sure why, but that is a very weak position for the
There
opponent.
it is to the a little
Going
better
across
shot of
over that knee.
And it's very hard to stop that. I think I'm doing the same thing here, but controlling that arm
Oh,
between my legs.
You're showing a little bit different entry rather than going to the side. You went right in front. Huh?
And I have your arm trapped there, so it's
Yeah.
harder to break
It's
out.
good to have these variations too, because you're not going to always catch the person with that favorite position that you like. You got to have 2 or 3 backups.
I've always said that judo is a lot like jazz. You know, kata is sort of like classical music where you have to follow the notes as they're printed on the paper, and judo, real competition judo, is more like jazz, where you have to go with the flow. You have to go with the music.
more of an extemporaneous type approach.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's what makes judo as interesting as it is. So dynamic and ever changing.
This will be the 40th year that I've been in a judo contest, and every clinic I go to, I learn something new. And for other sports that I enjoy, basketball and other sports that I enjoy doing, I do the same things I learned in high school, the same little movement, the same little jump shot. Judo, I learn something new every single clinic I go to.
It tends to be constantly evolving.
And then I kick myself and say, why didn't I know that before? This is something I do. I don't do very many chokes because I've broken my finger, so I'll fake the choke. When the person comes up to grab my arm, I'll slip under their arm and then just simply walk it around. Trap. Usually I pass my hand past the opponent's belt into my right hand, feed it in, and then just walk around again. And I can come up underneath and choke from the opposite side that I started, or just pull him over for a pin.
It looks like you're really controlling his back there, so he can't actually roll away from you.
And I'm holding his belt underneath his back so that
So he can't.
his right arm's pinned.
Oh, that's a strong position there.
Yeah, I think that was the thing that you were mentioning, where you get the elbow into the
Into the kidney, right.
Again, this is where you used to clamp the head, I think.
Right, I
with
used to
your
clamp the
knees.
head to try to isolate the head and the arm so that you couldn't.
And then you could do udegarami from the top, or
Udegarami,
slip into
yeah.
pins.
Jujigatami or Kila.
Yeah. That was sort of a trademark of yours.
For a while.
A little combination of a choke and going to a pin.
Yeah, it seems that the effective sequence of events, usually, from my opinion, is going from choking to arm locking. Here he's going to go for a choke, but he doesn't have to even go for an arm lock. But he's able to go from a choke to a pin or a choke to an arm lock. As the opponent tends to push you away from the, as you're choking them, then you can apply the arm lock.
You know, this is one of the areas that I think, when you look at wrestling, amateur wrestling, and sometimes we get those people into judo, they have a failing here, and they're a little bit apprehensive of the chokes and the arm bars. And I think that's one thing that if a judo person goes against an amateur wrestler, they should probably take advantage of those areas.
I've never really been afraid of wrestlers, amateur wrestlers on the ground, because we do different things. Where I have trouble with the wrestler is in the transitions between throws or from going to standing to the ground. They do that a little better than we do. But actually on the mat, they're taught to put our shoulders there for a very short time, and they don't control as well. And they're afraid of the chokes and the arm bars. But their transitions from standing up to going to the ground are just excellent.
Yeah, that's where they really shine, I think.
And I think another area too that they do a lot better is in the area of endurance. They have good physical endurance. They're really in top shape.
They really understand the meaning of being in conditioning.
Yeah.
And good endurance. Of course, we tend to use a lot more technique, so there's a tendency to not be in as good a shape, utilizing your techniques.
They were breaking from Yoko Shiogatame, and what have you done there? You've controlled tight with your legs and then pulled his arm down.
Oh, yeah.
And push away also with the left hand.
And then sankaku again, and you have an
Right.
arm bar and a sankaku.
Right. Or you can roll them over.
You roll them over into a pin. That's a very strong pin.
This one, Doug Nelson, the one that won a long time ago, the one that
From our era.
Yeah, from
From-
72
yeah.
Olympics, yeah.
right, taught me this one. You know, it seems that I got the same feeling from working with you and from Doug Nelson, that once you're on the mat, I mean, both of you have this ability to act like pythons. You know, you just kind of stick to the person, and there's a lot of strength that, although you're not really using it, you can feel that it's there. And I think that's just something that builds up over a long period of time with a lot of workout. Is that correct?
I think it does take a lot of time, but you just learn to basically control what needs to be controlled, and in doing that, the opponent feels like you basically are powerful, even though you may, but it's more of a total body strength than just any one part being strong. They say the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, and I think by controlling the susceptible parts, you tend to feel like to your opponent that you are in fact strong.
You're not a complete judo player if you only do throwing. Conversely, you're not a complete judo player if you only do mat work. You have to be able to do both. And I've always felt that I was able to attack standing players that were better than me because I wasn't afraid to go to the mats. Usually I wanted to go to the mats, and the only way I could do that was to make an attack. So if they countered me, I really didn't care that much because we were going to be down on the ground where I wanted to be. I think it made my throws actually better, being a good mat player.
Yeah, I think you develop that commitment to your throw, whereas if you're worried about being pinned, you may not commit as much, and therefore your throw, it would affect your throwing techniques.
I think, again, if you see this technique that's going on, the sankaku here, that a lot of times a person will spend too much time trying to choke with a sankaku when they can get a good armbar or get the pin. You have to work with that referee, and he's only going to give you so much time for you to get your choke. And if you've tried to choke for several seconds and nothing's happening, get the pin.
Yeah, you're right, that's why.
Yeah.
With the pin, you know you've got it. It's something solid you can count on.
You choke for 15 seconds, or if the clock goes out while you're choking, nothing happens. If you've pinned for 15 seconds, you got to score.
That's right, and they may continue the match on after, if you're in a pinning position when the time runs out.
I think this is one of the common things people have trouble with now. You get into Jujigatami and can't break the arms apart, and you wait very long, then the referee's going to make you stand up. So I found that I can switch to Yoko Sankaku, side Sankaku, fairly easy from there. The person grabs everything he can to keep from being armbarred. He thinks my foot's coming up there to break his hands loose, and I just slip it right through, and then feed my left arm through to his belt as soon as I get my leg in. And I guess you notice that's a nice looking leg there. I'll feed my left hand through to the belt and get my right and left hand on his belt, and then just sort of pop him up over my leg. And he's still usually hanging on like mad because he thinks I'm still going to try and break his fingers apart to get the armbar. And
Oh yeah, that's I've never seen that before.
and then hook the sankaku. Now I got to get clear up under his head again. And where most people will miss this is they'll try and sankaku the shoulders or the chest. And I've got to pop my leg clear out under so it's like a pillow under Hayward's head there.
That's a nice move. It's
Yeah,
really
I've
nice.
never seen that before. Looks very effective.
I think Eckersley tried this on Koaz of Israel.
That's where I first saw it, was in the Olympics. He scored with it.
Yeah.
I don't remember his opponent, but he scored an ippon with this in
That's
the Olympics.
very nice.
In fact, I got this off of a tape from the Olympics that
Oh yeah,
someone
that's
here
very
supplied me
good.
with.
Yeah.
I learned a lot from those tapes. There were a lot.
They
of
were
good-
very good, excellent training tools.
This
Oh,
is
that's nice.
Kareth Brown's move to sankaku, and this is Kareth Brown did this at the U.S. Open several years ago. Did this exact same move over and over and over again. Did a 2-on-1 on one side,
Yeah.
walked around,
That's
had sankaku, had the key lock before the player is even down.
oh yeah.
See, there's a 2-on-1, just a wrestler's 2-on-1, both hands on the one wrist. Control that end. Move around so that the opponent thinks that you're going to try and work it out into a wakigatami or just roll him, and then step over. And by the time he's realized that you're not going for a wakigatami or you're not going for a just a normal turnover, working the arm a little, he'll usually grab his belt or grab part of his gi in there so that he can't pull it out, and then just step over. That Kareth does this so well. He's probably, wouldn't you say he's the best sankaku player in the
Yeah,
world?
I think so.
Yeah,
Just step
that's
right
nice.
around. This is again where you used to have a really nice udig.
Yeah, that's right.
And see, I've key locked it already before he even hits the ground because he's
You've got
holding.
that, yeah.
He's holding his own belt to keep me from pulling it out, and I have to be out under his head. Again, I don't want a sankaku. I say this too much, but it's still where people miss Sankaku is they try and get the chest and shoulders instead of just the neck and the arm. And I've just crossed my ankles enough so that I can arm bar him or slide on top for the pin.
Here's a simple choke, just using the hands, just pulling in, which you don't see very often. And you probably won't see it very often either. It's usually done by a person that has a lot more skill going against a person that doesn't have very much.
When you say it's better against somebody like a wrestler that's sort of holding you off with his
Yeah,
arms and trying to
usually
grab
lets
your
his
legs.
neck out and can just get it right in.
This is something we used to do 100 years ago, the old rolling kind of choke, but I've always done it from this side. Most people would do it from a normal judo grip, but by the time I slip my head over and roll,
Oh,
they
nice.
haven't realized that the choke started. I'm on the wrong side. I think if you do it normally from a normal judo grip, people suspect it or feel it a lot sooner. And from here, I'll just give a jerk down, sort of shake the tree, as Paul Maruyama says.
That's right.
And
That's a
then snap
big
my...
tree you got there.
Yeah.
This is one of the sequoias out here. And then the trouble with Randy here is that he doesn't have a neck, so it's real
Yeah.
hard.
You choke with
real hard to
fly.
choke him.
Yeah.
You have to show your talent there.
And again,
Skill.
this is again a fundamental judo move, a fundamental wrestling movement that judo players don't do well enough. Is just a simple sit up. You have to be able to take one leg and sit out and set through with it. And I think that sometimes it would be good for a lot of judo players to take a wrestling class just to get some of the fundamental movements, how to really bridge and how to really sit out and do some of those little basic skills.
This is one of those techniques that where the person has your leg entwined and you want to try to get away or try to get into some more advantageous position. You just really catch the inside of your sleeve and come in for the choke as we showed before.
And again, that's not against the rules to grab inside of your own pant leg or your own sleeve, your own jacket sleeve.
It's another
This-
knockdown and going into a choke position.
This is a movement that another of my friends does so well, Pat Burris. I've worked with Pat Burris and walked away with
Ooh.
nice bruises on my thigh from that initial kick. This is really an effective kind of move. Knee up into the thigh.
Of course, you don't want to hit with the knee. You want to try to hit with the inside of your thigh against the inside of the opponent's thigh. Sometimes you might make a mistake, but usually you try to get the thigh against the opponent's thigh. You know, we've been seeing a lot of techniques here, but John and Jimmy, what do you think as far as techniques? If a person is starting out to learn and practice some of these moves, should he take maybe 2 or 3, or how many do you think would be a good start?
I think that you have to have one good movement from each of the positions you're going to hit in mat work, and that means you have to have one when from both sides of referee's position, when you're down on your knees or when you're the person on top in referee's position. You have to have a good move when you're laying on your back and the opponent's between your legs, and then the converse, you have to have a good attack when you're between the opponent's legs and he's on his back. And so when you're starting, you need one good movement from each of those positions, plus the fundamentals, Keisagatame and the fundamental judo movements.
Yeah, we'll come back to you in a minute, Jimmy, but here, what are you trying to show us here, John?
Is how to not be choked. When I feel a hand coming in, I'll shrug my shoulder really hard, push the trapezius muscle up into my neck towards my ear, and lean into it. And even if the opponent gets it in, there's always a hole there. Just slide my head around. I don't have to use my hands. I'm going to use my hands to fight you with. Look for the hole. Look for the opening. Put my chin down into it and keep from being choked. You can also take your tongue and push it into the right behind your teeth, into the soft, fleshy place behind your teeth, and push down. And it's much, much harder to be choked when you do that. You can probably give me a medical reason. All I know is that it works when I take my tongue down.
Notice
Push
he did say trapezius in here.
Yeah, that's true. There was a medical term in there somewhere.
Jimmy wrote it out on a card and held it up in front. Flash card. Notice here now, when a person starts the sankaku or any of the chokes from the front, if I put my hand up against the side of my face, shrug my shoulder into it tight, and then roll, I can slip right out of the chokes.
Now, Jimmy, we were asking a little earlier, how many techniques do you think you would have to have, or what are some of the important areas that you would have to go into? Do you think you should start out with, like, the Newaza area, or?
I think that starting out with, of course, the basic hold downs, I preferred Kamishio Gatami and Kazuri Kamishio over Keitsu Gatami because I felt it was stronger and it controlled the opponent better. So I would probably emphasize, say, going and controlling the upper four corners better in more of a type of pinning positions. But I think, like John's saying, you have to really narrow it down to 8 different moves, 8 different positions. We're talking about, you know, a 3-dimensional art here, and we're talking about 360 degrees. And you've got to be good at all those, every angle, to be able to be effective. My opinion was that I would always try to attack the person's weak side, which I felt was their left side, because they're not used to being pinned as much on that side. They're used to being pinned in a normal way, and they learn their pins in a normal way. So I would always try to come the opposite direction, or around the opposite way, because they're not as used to escaping from that direction. So I would always attack that coming from that opposite way. But I think that you've got to basically, you know, learn the basics, learn the fundamentals, and then begin to build on the fundamentals. But again, like we were talking before, you've got to control the legs as you come into a person when they're on their back. And you can't skip over the legs to get to the upper body, because you have to get the cake before you get the icing. But I would go, if I was going to do Newaza, I would learn the Kamishio Gatamis, the Yokoshio Gatamis, those pins that control more of the person than just the head and neck.
I've always felt, too, that when you have Keitsu Gatami, it's probably the most common judo pin, but still it's sort of a dead end.
John, how much time do you devote here at the OTC to the practice of mat work during practice time?
I'd say approximately 1/3 of the practice. Normally we do mat work before we do the standing. Some nights it's 5-minute rounds, some nights 6 5-minute rounds, which would be the equivalent of about a half hour of mat work preceding the hour randori.
And then what trends do you see in mat work that has occurred within the past 5 years? I know you've been a major competitor in past years, and you've probably seen judo differing from when you were competing. What do you think is a differing point as far as mat work is concerned?
One of the things I think is different, I know there's a lot of changes, but I've seen a lot of innovations in arm locks. For example, these arm lock series and rolls that are coming out now, where one player attacks from the standing position while the other player is on all fours. There's been a lot of innovations, a lot of new arm lock rolls from that position. That's one of the major differences.
And as a coach, what advantages do you see in a player who is able to do well both in standing as well as on the mat?
Well, aside from the obvious fact that a person has more of a chance to win using mat work, there's an advantage in the standing also, in that a player is not afraid to attack from a standing position and terminate the attack all the way down to the ground. It gives them more confidence standing up as well. They don't have to worry about their mat position quite as much, throwing from the line to out of bounds. They don't have to try to avoid mat work in that way, so they have more confidence standing up also.
How do you think our views differ as far as, well, not only on a local level, but on a national level, as, let's say, in deference to the Europeans and the Asians, as far as mat work is concerned? Do you think we do more, or do you think we do less?
I think, in general, throughout the United States, we do less. And I think that's a mistake. I think we need to emphasize mat work more than we do at present, for the reasons that I mentioned previously. I think in Japan, anyway, more time is devoted towards mat work than it is here in the United States. It's been my experience and my observation.
John, do you have any closing comments for those people that are interested in mat work?
Only one. I think that if a person is weak in mat work, they can develop mat work not only through mat work randori, but through repetition and drilling. Just as one would acquire a skill standing up through uchikomi and standing drills, I think in mat work the secret to gaining a mat work maneuver is to repeat that movement a number of times each practice session. And also I feel that not everybody can be a great player standing up, but everyone can acquire mat work through drilling. It doesn't require a lot of fast twitch muscle fibers or anything like that. If a person drills continuously at mat work and repeats the movement over and over and over again, they can develop good mat work.
Well, thank you very much, John, for your comments.
Thank you, Hayward.
Okay, we're just going to explain a little bit about the arm bar. This part of the thing that you want to remember about the arm bar is that the arm bar can only be taken on the elbow joint. And a lot of people in judo will take arm bars on other areas, and that's incorrect. You should be taking your arm bar on the elbow joint. There is one prohibited movement in the application of an arm bar, and that is to take a wakigatame and then to go directly to the ground without stopping or giving the opportunity to your opponent to submit to the arm bar. And that would be to go up and to sit out and fall to the ground. The reason that's prohibited is that many people have been injured by this type of action, so you don't want to go into an arm bar by slamming our bodies into the mat as we apply the wakigatame. Okay.
Mental, probably the most important armbar in this straight Jujigatame.
Very important.
The Garami series, again,
Udegarami.
and these, I think, Jim, were specialties of yours, wouldn't you say?
I would say that I tried to use them as much as I could to either create an arm lock situation or a pin, and they're very effective. They do put pressure on the shoulder, though, and that's why I think that they're effective. They do. You can create a. This is one of my favorite positions.
Too often I see people on the bottom of referee's position just stay there and wait. And you can attack from there just like you can attack. Judo's a sport for